Corporate greed and record profits. With gas prices at all-time highs, inflation climbing like a SpaceX rocket, politicians and the talking heads on TV are looking for anyone and anything they can blame except their own policies. Whenever this happens, they reach for the playbook, turn to page 1, and blame everything on corporate greed and record profits. Just the other day, the president went as far as saying Exxon makes more money than God, which I thought was kind of weird. So personally, I never really bought into the narrative that corporate greed and record profits are the reason for all our problems. But over the last several months, we keep hearing more and more about it. And then a few weeks ago, I published a video talking about oil prices, supply and demand, and how we got to this point today. And that video has over 500,000 views, and there are hundreds and hundreds of comments blaming it on corporate greed and record profits. Here's just one example of those hundreds of comments. Michael says, "In saying it isn't corporate greed is a straight lie, period. They're making record profits, record profits. They are screwing us, and they have brainwashed a large part of the country that is not them. Wow." Now, I can't fault anyone for leaving a comment like Michael did or the hundreds of others, because let's face it, this information is beat into our heads 24/7, 365, and most people don't have the time and or the desire to kind of dive into the numbers and find out what the truth really is. In order to find the truth, you have to put your emotions aside, forget about the talking points and the headlines, and just look at the numbers yourself. Besides, he's probably smarter than most of the people we get our information from. Now, we live north of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and every single morning without fail, there's a local news station that posts something on Facebook talking about gas prices. And it's always something like record high gas prices. What do you think of this? And they get everybody fighting back and forth, arguing with one another. It doesn't accomplish anything. All it does is distract and divide us even more. I'm going to have to speed up the pace of this video a little bit because dinner is going to be ready in just a little bit. Now, before we get into the numbers, I want to make a prediction, and this is just based off that last video that I talked about, which, by the way, is up to about 700,000 views now, and the comments just keep coming in about corporate greed and record profits. But it appears that about 25% of the people think that's what the problem is. And what my hope is for this video is that out of that 25%, at least a couple thousand people can put their emotions aside for a minute, actually just look at the numbers, do their own research, and I think they'll change their mind. Now, some people, they'll just kind of dig in their heels. They'll ignore the facts. It's just the way it is. It gets beat into your head every day, but like I said, by the politicians and the talking heads on TV telling you what they want you to believe. And the goal is to keep all of us fighting back and forth, because nothing is ever going to change while we're divided. The only way things are going to get better is if we're united. And the only way we're going to get united is if people look into things themselves and form their own opinions. How's it coming over there?
It's coming along nicely.
This is our new thing now.
It is.
Cook over a fire probably 4 nights a week.
Plus, I love steak, so it's a win-win.
All right, so let's get into these numbers. We're going to start off with Shell. They have been in the news quite a bit. First quarter 2022, Shell had a net income of $7.12 billion with a 8.45% profit margin. That's a lot of money right there, $7.12 billion. Chevron, they made $6.26 billion. That's their net income, first quarter 2022, and a profit margin of 11.96%. Exxon, and as the president said, they made more money than God. They made $5.48 billion and had a profit margin of 6.23%. Now, as a general rule of thumb, like when companies or when big business is looking at other businesses and evaluating them, 5% profit margin is on the low side. 10%, that's pretty much average. 20% is actually pretty good. None of these three companies that I talked about are anywhere near 20% profit margins. The closest is Chevron at 11.96%. Now let's look at some other companies that you don't hear about corporate greed and record profits. Tesla, first quarter of this year, they made $3.32 billion and they had a 17.69% profit margin. Apple, $25 billion in net, that's a lot, $25 billion in net income with a 25.71% profit margin. You've got Google, they made $16.44 billion in net income with a 24.17% profit margin. Microsoft, they made $16.73 billion with a 33.89% profit margin. So if you're going to call a company like Exxon, greedy at a 6.23% profit margin, does that make Microsoft at 34% 5 or 6 times more greedy than Exxon? And I mean, in my opinion, it doesn't. Everyone can make their own determination, I guess, what greed is. But like I said, a general rule of thumb, 5% low, 10% average, 20% high. None of these companies are anywhere near high profit margins. And I know people, I got accused in the last video of being on the payroll of big oil. I used to work in the oil business. All I did was build well pads. But I'm not defending oil companies. I'm defending the truth. And the whole thing is, if anyone takes anything away from this video, it's like I said, the more we stay divided, the worse things are going to get. That's what they want. Between the media and the politicians, they want us all fighting back and forth. And I'm going to keep repeating this point because it's so important. Once we're united, if that ever happens, things will get better. And the only way that's going to happen is if people do their own homework and quit listening to the politicians and the media. Now, I must admit, there is one organization that has made, I guess you could say, 100% profits on gas and diesel sales in the first quarter of 2022, and that is state and federal governments. The federal gas tax is 18.3 cents per gallon. Federal diesel tax is 24.3 cents per gallon. Average state gas tax is 34.24 cents per gallon. Average state diesel tax is 35.89 cents per gallon. We live here in Pennsylvania, and it is way higher than that. We have some of the highest gas and diesel taxes in the country. But anyway, with that being said, we use about 369 million gallons of gasoline each day in the United States, and we use about 122 million gallons of diesel fuel. So if you combine the average state and federal gas and diesel tax, the government, state and federal, collected $24 billion the first quarter of the year. So compare that to Exxon, once again, $5.48 billion is what they made after they invested a whole bunch of money. The government got $24 billion the first quarter. I have another fun fact for you. In 2021, the federal government spent $6.82 trillion, which is just an incredible amount of money. That works out to about $18,685 million a day. Break that down a little bit further, $778 million an hour. So with that being said, now remember, Exxon made $5.48 billion the first quarter of 2022. The federal government spends that amount every 8 hours. We're almost there. So we had a great dinner with some burgers, some steaks. A lot of people ask about this fire pit. It is kind of it's just from Amazon. I'll put a link in the description.
Well worth it. Well worth it.
Yeah, and it may just, this isn't it's not a top of the line fire pit. I'll put it that way, but it's going to last you.
Get what you pay for it.
It's going to last you a couple years for sure. It's heavier than the last one we had, but seriously, we cook on this 3-4 nights a week now, easy in the summertime.
Yeah, this just swivels around. I think I showed you that. Comes with a little poker. You know what? Can't go wrong. And It's therapeutic, it's relaxing and peaceful to sit by a fire. The flames have that infrared that your body needs. It's just...
That's what it is. We actually did some research on that. That's
right.
why fires are so relaxing. They really are. So it's first thing in the morning. We didn't finish this video up last night, and it is actually hoodie weather today.
It is.
It went from 95 degrees the other day to it's about 50 this morning. But before we wrap this up, we want to go over some of these new hats that we got. Show them what you have there, Melissa.
This here's the real tree with the camo in the front, the blaze hunting orange in the back with a Velcro closure, and the real tree tag. We have a solid cap that's the blaze orange.
Hunting season will be here before you know it.
I know, right? Can you believe it? And then the camo bill with all these have the leather patch of Outdoors with the Morgans, finer things in life on it. So I was just getting these out to show you. These are the ones. This is actually Mike's favorite. It's a real tree with the camo front, sand color mesh, and the snapback. This is these two are most popular. This is the mossy oak, and this is the real tree. It's a full camo all the way around. It has an American flag on the left side with the Velcro closure. And then these two are new. These are a solid brown front with the camo in the back. This is real tree, this is mossy oak, and the leather patch, and then they have Velcro closures. This one is the gray front with the orange back and this the snapback. And this is chocolate brown, and it's a softer, more flexible hat with a snapback. And then we have a mocha. This is more of a firm with the sand mesh back. It's a snapback closure. We have the solid, or slate, not solid, slate gray with the white back and a closure.
And then this one's your favorite here.
The digital camo. I like the digital camo, and it's a snapback. So there you have them. Let me just line them up and show you.
So hats, shirts, hoodies. I'll put a link in the description.
Thanks, Mike.
And I will pin a comment as well. I think we have shipped out about 700 hats so far, and it's cool because people have been emailing us from all over the world pictures of them wearing their hats, which is pretty wild.
Yeah.
So check them out. So I'm actually glad I didn't finish this video last night, because overnight I had a few more things that I thought about. I mentioned that state and federal governments make about $24 billion a quarter on gas and fuel tax. Now everyone keeps talking about going to all electric cars. Whatever happens, happens. I can't control it, and that's fine with me. But they have to make up that money somehow. They're not going to let that go. So I don't know if we'll end up being taxed by the mile or something like that, but that's something to keep in mind. They make a lot of money for road and bridge repairs and other things off of that money they collect on fuel and gasoline taxes.
Another thing to think about is our grid set up for everyone to have an electric car?
Yeah, that's a good point. We talked about that before. Sometime I may look at those numbers a little bit as well and see, but they're already talking about rolling blackouts or brownouts this summer. We have a long way to go before we go all electric. And something else I wanted to mention too was subsidies for oil and gas companies. A lot of people have been emailing me some study by the International Monetary Fund talking about $5.9 trillion in subsidies that fossil fuel companies get. And it's a bunch of nonsense. It really is, because it's including companies all over the world. So you have like Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Venezuela. All their oil companies are owned by the state. So that's like saying that the United States is subsidizing the U.S. military. It's all the government. Now, are there subsidies for oil and gas companies? To tell you the truth, I don't know. I've actually looked for them. I'm talking U.S. oil companies. I've looked for them. I can't really find anything. Sometimes, you know, people confuse a tax break with a subsidy. A subsidy is when they give you something, not take less of something. And so I think that definition gets messed up a little bit. Sure, there's probably a few. I've honestly looked for them. I haven't been able to find any subsidies. If you know of any, let me know in the comments. I'd be curious to see what they are. But there's a lot of tax breaks and things like that. I don't really consider that a subsidy. Like I said, you're taking less of something from someone. You're not giving them something. A true subsidy, I think, would be like, remember years ago the was it a solar panel company, Cylindra? I think we gave them $500 million and they went out of business in the middle of the night, and that was the end of it. That's kind of a subsidy. Or on electric cars, you know, they're giving you money, or the company that makes the electric cars, to buy them. I don't see them doing that with oil. Maybe there is, I have no idea. Lastly, I think the most important part of this video, and I should have mentioned this at the beginning, by no means am I trying to come across as contentious or start arguments. I'm trying to do the exact opposite of that, because there's too much fighting and bickering in the world. But the only reason I did this video was there were hundreds and hundreds of comments blaming high oil and gas prices on corporate greed, and it's just simply not true. And like I said, some people will dig in their heels, they won't agree, they can look the numbers up themselves, they still won't agree with it. But I do think some people will stop listening to what we're being told and do more of their own homework. And I think that's the key for us all to start coming together a little bit. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Education. Just our family.
And the thing is, people don't have the time. You shouldn't have to do that. You know what I mean? You should be able to believe what you're being told, yeah,
exactly.
But you can't. You just can't. Anything that comes off the TV pretty much is just in one ear, out the other, and you can find flaws in everything they say in no time at all. You can. So I hope we can come together a little bit as a country, and I hope things get better. And I think that's about it. So like we always say, we appreciate you all being here, and we will catch you on the next one.
Thanks.